So, hi everybody. Hi EQUUS family and friends and anyone who's tuning in for the first time. Welcome to EQUUS. And this is our part of our regular series of conversations that we have with fascinating people. And we are really happy to have you here. Please stay tuned towards the end of the conversation. We will be doing some giveaways and some special promos and just some really great offers. So please stay tuned through to the end and see what we have available. Today, I am joined by just one of my favorite people on planet Earth, Nell Derick Debevoise. She is the founder and CEO of 3D Performance, also known as the Inspiring Cowgirl. She is an inspiring cowgirl, even though she's on the East Coast. And she's also a member of the EQUUS faculty and part of our EQUUS Experience facilitator certification program. We'll talk a little bit about that probably today. Nell is, she helps high performers and impact-seeking leaders to flourish in their work and lives. And, you know, she really has a social justice kind of bent in her work. She's about the work in the world, making meaningful change in the world. And because of that, she often helps the people that she works with to not only do the work that they're inspired to do in the world, but do it in a way that helps them to be the human that they want to be, to create the world that they want to create. Some of the people that she has helped are leaders in organizations such as Google, Smuckers, American Express, the National Park Service. And I hear that we're being joined by a four-legged as well, Nell. Is that right? Is that him you're talking, or her?
There's Riley.
Hi, Riley. We all have our four-leggeds in our offices.
Say hi, Rip. There's Rip's tail.
Yeah, they were like, yes, I need to have something to say.
Singing.
Yeah, so Nell, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for that beautiful and generous introduction, Callie. It's one of my favorite people on the planet. It is a treat, an honor to be in space with you.
Thank you. Well, you know, I think what I'd love to do with a lot of this conversation today is just let's talk shop. There's so many people who are a part of the EQUUS community who are either coaches or run small businesses or are leaders in some kind of way. Even if they're leaders of families, you know, it all is a part of how we engage with the world and create meaning in our lives. And so I would love to just talk shop about how do we do that? You know, the world is running faster and faster. We have a lot of pressure to perform on social media and kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, to hustle, to do the hustle. And yet I know for me that, you know, there's this tension between the hustle of really making a viable business work or a viable project work and who I have to be as a visionary inside that business or project, who is not a hustler. You know, I'm more a monk, a writer, a poet, someone who needs time and space in nature. So I'm curious about, you know, I know you think about this too, just what are your thoughts on that friction point between those two ways of being in the world?
So many, as you know, we've had some of this conversation before, and certainly not, haven't cracked it. I was talking to another fellow EQUUS facilitator earlier this week, and she's like, if you guys figure that out, let me know. Because I was sort of talking about our conversation. And look, I mean, there are some buckets in which I think about it. And so one is, you know, this kind of impact social justice identity, drive that I have, I started my career in nonprofit work in pretty frontline staff, working with some of it more than others, but 4 years or so was living in the West Bank and Palestine and working with refugee kids and moms, on not medical care, but mental health care in really dire circumstances, and Ahmed was one of the little boys whose mom enrolled him and, was brought to tears when we told her that he was in, and that, yes, a bus would come pick him up. And we were like, that's just what we do, and 6 weeks into the program, when she says, thank you so much for letting him in off the wait list. He hasn't wet his bed since the beginning of the program. And just the heartbreak that he was wetting his bed because of all the trauma and violence that they're living with. And then the knowledge that Ahmed, thank goodness, Ahmed is not wetting the bed anymore, but how many others are there? And so if there's anything that can get a hustler to hustle or a non-hustler to hustle, it's Ahmed no longer wetting his bed because he's got some outlets for this trauma. And so there's that part of the drive to hustle, which is like, holy shoot, for a general audience. I mean, the volume and the breadth and the depth of the Ahmeds times 9,000. And that's not a statement about Ahmed more than near the Israeli kid, obviously, or the Congolese family, or the family in Brooklyn being, but the number of humans right now that need us, that need a better future is really daunting and overwhelming. And so I immediately say, right, you hear me say, need us. And there's that, problematic, maybe white savior or compulsion, or, there's problematicness to that. And there's just human compassion, right? That any of us doing this work, any of you watching have that. And if it's something that you've silenced because you work in corporate and you're not a bleeding heart or whatever, if you're here, you have that too. So own that in yourself. So that's the social justice, change, compassion, human thing of living in the time that we do, living the human experience where suffering is a thing, and in a media world where it's a very visible, loud thing. How could we not want to hustle and do more and work harder and be of more service? And yet, I know from my decade in nonprofit, and I know you have experience, but that martyr approach or that white savior approach to doing that work is really not what we need more of.
Yeah.
And so how do you do it in a way that is aligned for, don't try to cure cancer if you're not a researcher or an MD, if you have money to give to that and help the researchers and the MDs, maybe that's something you should do about. But, I think, an interview that came up in my book was a CEO who talked about his circle of concern versus his circle of influence. And so in this bucket of the social justice compulsion to hustle or do more or be out there all the time, I thought that was a really helpful distinction of, cancer is something that I'm concerned about, right? Like all of us, unfortunately, such near brushes with it and lives taken and suffering and all of that. And I have no influence over cancer. I can love up on friends and colleagues who are living with it, certainly. But other than that, it's not in my circle of influence. And so that's one door that I just have to put aside and leave to other people, and so that's in that kind of justice seeking piece of all the work we do, however that is, whether it's raising that family of empathetic, risk-taking, loving humans, or running a company in a dignified way, or providing mental health for children of trauma, whatever your version is, there's justice and humanity and service that you're doing. And So how can you get really clear about what you're well positioned to do and keeping it there and not overreaching, which burns yourself out and makes it all less impactful?
Yeah. Yeah. And then how does that translate for you on a day-to-day level of where you draw the line on, where you turn your light off at the end of the day? In working with you, both in the EECF training, the EQUUS experience facilitator training, and also in the wisdom circle you were in, I remember you being very boundaried about, in a really beautiful way that modeled to others about, this is my time availability. This is not my time availability. And I'm curious what kind of inner compass setting that you have that helps you navigate that, because I experienced you get quite some pressure around your particular take on flow and expectations about when you should be available, or this is what a good person does. Kind of, how dare you be off on a ski trip kind of thing. So I just wonder about your, like, how you follow that internal compass setting, what it is, how oh yeah, this is the right, this phone call today, but this meeting not today. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a few parts to it. I really like to have fun. I really like to travel, and I have incredible privilege and delight that I have a husband who does too, and that we have financial resource to do that. We leave tomorrow on that same ski trip. That's important to me, and it nourishes my soul, and it nourishes my relationship, and it gets me out in the world. And that's a non-negotiable for me. I think I want and demand more days on the road than a lot of people. I didn't grow up nomadic at all. I didn't go to Europe till I was 16, and then not abroad again till college. But the first 10 years of my career were very nomadic. And so I lived in that way, and I'm a good traveler. I sleep anywhere. And so that's just really important to me. And travel means that you're not available. And when I'm out skiing, I don't want to be on calls. Usually, if it's a 6-day trip, the time zone works, and it's a call I care about and want to move along, then that's great. I'm happy to be really integrated in that way. It's not, I love hearing, I take it as a real compliment that I'm strictly boundaried, and that's very fluid in my life. Like it's an energy boundary, not a logistical boundary. If you looked at my calendar, it's like bonkers.
Nice.
Because I don't mind that. It makes sense. I'm also very efficient and ambitious and hardworking, and I want to move things forward. And so, and I want to be on the road. So I don't, it's not like, well, I'm gone that week, so I can't do anything, because I'm gone 3 to 15 days a month, probably, between work travel and personal travel. So that's one part of it, I think, is energy boundaries, not logistical rigidity.
I love that. I love energy boundaries. It reminds me a lot of when in our assertiveness course, Assertiveness for Life and Leadership, we define the boundary as that point at which you begin to lose yourself. So it's very organic and fluid, and but I'm also getting an image of your calendar just not looking like your usual calendar, because you would take a call at 6 a.m. if you're skiing all day. And if you feel like that would serve you, it's not like, no, I'm skiing today, I'm not taking a call. So there's some fluidness and organicness about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Sorry. Keep going.
I think,
this is good.
Well, so you hit on a really timely, shadow piece to this as well. There are a few, but one that I'll say that's come up a lot is I lived the first 10 years of my career abroad. And so I was 3,000 to 6,000 miles away from my friends from college or from growing up and my family. And I had friends, I had colleagues, I was an expat, and that was a very cool piece of it. You get kind of launched into these weird circles of humans that you would probably not otherwise be friends or acquaintances with, but you're all expats in the same place. And so you meet these other humans who, in my experience, were just really cool, interesting other people, but they're not deep friends. They didn't know me deeply. I wasn't known deeply. And so I was kind of off the radar and having all these cool experiences and living this life, which was amazing. But it distanced me from some of the sweetest people in my life, from my mom, from my college friends, and so I think 20 years later, 24 years later, from those first years out of school, I can still feel myself as kind of a nice to have in people's lives in some way. I don't see myself as essential in relationships or even in family. I'm a stepmom. I'm not my stepkid's biological mom. And my husband says all the time, they'll all agree, like, I am the glue in some ways. And I feel that, and I'm proud of that. And I've worked hard to make that the case over 11 years. And there's a core thing, I think, coming from this that I don't ever feel essential. So in the wisdom circle, I'm like, I just won't be there. Like, you guys are good. You don't need me.
Yeah, you matter. You matter.
It's very liberating, but it's also it's lonely. It's isolating. It's to not be essential is, yeah.
Yeah. So, you're really articulating just, everybody wants a formula, right? This is how we set boundaries, and this is how I do work-life balance. And if you promise ABC or take step 1, 2, 3, then this is how it's going to happen. But as you're speaking, it's so very clear to me, again, and as it has always been, that we find our way between these edges of polarities, between belonging and not belonging, between our sense of non-essentialness allowing us to be more boundaried, and yet we matter. So maybe we do want to be a little more available, and yet we don't want to be so available that we lose ourselves. So it's just this kind of, I don't know what the word would be, sort of a heat-seeking missile that's trying to find its way to the right spot. I don't know if we ever really find it. But I do know that the more I work with people, the more I learn that just this spot here of the tension between belonging to other, whether it's a partner or a project or a business or the world or a social justice endeavor, and belonging to ourselves creates this inherent, a little bit of tension that we're always working, right? We're always working it.
And because I think we all have different boundaries and definitions of belonging, right? Are each of our own optimized, never perfected, but the closer that we get into that isn't to yours or to mine, and so I can show up, not that I always am, but even if I were being my best belonging self in the wisdom group, as we saw, that's not going to line up with someone's expectation of best belonging.
Right. Yeah.
And so there's tension there, even if we're each individually doing the best job we can, right? Which is where, of course, I think transparency and expectations and the honest communication, which we saw also happen so beautifully, right? And to share, like, oh, I feel, and what a gift. Again, it was totally a gift. I wasn't annoyed at that pushback or criticism or call out or whatever. I was like, oh, again, you needed me. My presence matters. That was actually a real gift and deepening of the relationship. So, but it is not it's not a scheduling rule. We can just
no, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I hear that, that you, you know enough about yourself that you're not going, it's, as you said, it's a non-negotiable. Your trips away, your travel, it's part of who you are. It's native to you to be sort of out there in the world. And it's also, and it's a new thing also to understand that your presence matters and that you belong to things that may want to take you, ask things of you, ask you to participate in the world or whatever. So no, that's beautiful. And just on that tangent, because these things tend to just go where they go. I know this thing about not knowing that you matter. You know, you and I are both coaches. We are often circling around this space of presence, someone's presence. And I find that, myself included, this idea that our presence matters can be kind of revolutionary to people. And we'll often sort of, if I'm doing a workshop or I've got a virtual course or a wisdom circle, that, you know, don't just like, if you have to leave early, don't just sneak away, because people notice that your presence is no longer present. And we may think that's the right thing to do, is to just kind of disappear ourselves or not respond to something or just not do something, because we just have been taught that our presence doesn't matter, but it does matter. And when I think about my own life, there have been many times that I have inadvertently hurt another because I didn't think my presence mattered. So, you know, I didn't respond, or I didn't follow up, or I didn't show up for something, or I didn't whatever, because I really just thought my presence didn't matter. And of course, you find out later it did, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I just wondered if you have just anything to say about that, about, you know, your presence mattering.
Yeah. What it brings up is, which is why I sit with it for a minute, is sort of a pushback that, no, it doesn't. But I'll try to, where I go immediately, and we can circle back to that, it does matter, but where I go immediately is that I also have a really strong sense of, as I know we share, and so I think this is an interesting piece to bring in, of kind of peace with the universe, and it is what it is, and it is all how it should be. And so I think that's part of it for me too, is if I have a flight come up on the pre-scheduled 6 months ago wisdom group time, I'll try not to, if that was pre-existing, or if there was, you know, I'll try not to. And if it's a must commitment for some reason, myself or other, then I won't do that, obviously. But if that's the thing, then that's a choice, right? That I'm overlaying this new thing over that thing. And I have a sense, there's two pieces to it. One is just, it is what it is, and kind of universal knowing that everything unfolds as it should or will. And that's how it goes. And I'll watch that conversation after the fact. And that will allow me a different version of engagement, because I'm actually a better big picture, full circle processor than in the moment. And so then maybe I can add something that, right? Like whatever the thing is, that's just how it should unfold. There's another piece for me personally, that certainly other people have, but it's not from that kind of, I think, a shared like school of thought around universal rightness. And that for me is a little bit of, I tend not to take things very seriously. And sometimes that's great, and sometimes it's bad. I think I attribute it back to a lot of the kind of some of the frontline work I've done, that not that I haven't lived in day-to-day peril or violence. I've been in some intense situations, and so have versions of that. But I think I just have a very real sense that, like, this is all amazing work that we're doing, and it's heartful and it's grand. And if someone's not in the wisdom group from 2 to 4, life will proceed and no one's dying on the operating table and peace agreements aren't being blown up, and so good news, bad news, the shadow of that is like, okay, but does anything matter, right? You can get nihilistic pretty quickly. And people can feel like they don't matter. And I take value net in that about myself, that like, the LinkedIn invite went out a few days late and people didn't come. Maybe only one person was meant to be there and hear it directly, and maybe the recording will work, or whatever it is, So anyway, that's kind of my roundabout way of getting back to my presence doesn't really matter. I told you. I don't mean to.
It matters and it doesn't matter. It's like,
that is not true. But yeah, that's the nuance that comes up for me.
Yeah. And your experience, and I hear this, is, you've been on the front lines of some pretty intense situations, and it's a bit giving you a perspective. I hear that that's in there, a perspective of what really matters and what doesn't matter. It's a perspective that only someone who's been in your position could have. And, all these other things over here are just some major first world problems that we just don't need to get wrapped up into.
Right.
And
I
go ahead.
Just well, on the your presence matters, I think too, I have a little I think there's a little bit of a sense that it brings me to this kind of like enlightened self-interest that I talk about, of you need to get really honest and clear about how it matters to you only. And so I say, when I talk about enlightened self-interest, right, I mean that like, it is not in any of our self-interests to only worry about ourselves and our well-being in the world, because loneliness is actually more toxic than cigarettes to our long-term health, not mental health, our physical risk of heart disease and dying health. Loneliness is worse than cigarettes, worse than by like 12x, I think, or something. I mean, the number is big and daunting. So when I say that, I don't mean screw them all. It doesn't matter if I show up unless I want to be there. I mean that I need to be really clear about myself, first of all, and what I need to thrive and have a cup that's overflowing to give, but also about the people around me, and not only who I need around me and what I need from them, but what they need from me to do that for me. Right? I can't take care of their needs. I can't make up their boundaries, but I have to learn them and honor them. And then for the world, what kind of a world do I want to see? Do I want to see a world where there are thriving peer groups that stretch each other to be great? And how would those work? Well, I can't show up 1 out of 7 times for that. And so I can't plan a ski trip and a surf trip and a shopping trip to Paris always during the wisdom group sessions, right?
Right.
But I think that's part of it too, is like, how do my mattering matters to other people in the extent that they matter to me, or, somehow it comes back to that self-interest.
Yeah. It's an ecosystem, and it's a positive feedback loop that is important. And I'm curious about, in your coaching, and you've talked about, spending time in nature and getting outdoors, and you're a horsewoman, of course, as well, because you're a equine-assisted facilitator. How does the natural world in general, and horses specifically, how does that inform your coaching?
Horses, but nature more broadly, but they are such a shared way to get at that perspective of what really matters, I find. So there's nothing good or better about having done frontline work, or the, yes, that brought me unique perspective. So did 2 years at JP Morgan, followed by a career in private equity for my colleague or my client. There's nothing better or worse about those experiences. And I think in this world of media and social media and fastness and extractive capitalism and speed and conflict and extremism, there are some absolutes there about what matters and what doesn't. And nature, and then specifically that communal, the inclusive culture of horses, is a thing that any of us can access and learn from without spending 10 years working a nonprofit on the field or whatever else it might be. Because and in an even more powerful way, because it's totally universal. It's not some slice of like, well, that's your perspective because you did that. It is the way that for tens of millions of years, one of the longest stretches of a species in the 4 billion years of evolution, horses have thrived. And so it's not a choice of sector or career that has given them that perspective. Right. It is a way. And so whether or not we're in the arena with physically four-legged equine beasts, which is an absolute total pleasure and no doubt the most bang for buck to get these lessons. But no matter what, that piece influences my perspective heavily, whether that's explicit to clients or not.
Yeah. So whether a client's in the arena or not, that transmission from your tutelage from the horses comes through.
Yeah.
And, I do want to speak a little bit about the EQUUS Experience facilitator program, but I want to ask, from your perspective, you're a coach, you're a facilitator, you're an author. Clearly you don't need to go to the extra trouble, expenditure, drama of becoming an equine-assisted coach. You already had a very robust professional platform. What on earth drove you to go to that extra length? Because there are very few, in the equine-assisted industry, there are a lot of folks who are horse people who then want to help people. So they get into the equine-assisted learning world or equine-assisted therapy. But they're not coaches. They're not coaches, and real coach certification, the real training. I mean, yes, you can go for a weekend, whatever, and get some certificate and call yourself a coach, but that's akin to, comparing going online and getting a minister's license so you can marry somebody, or going to Harvard Divinity School and, being certified by the ICF as a coach is the Harvard Divinity School of Coaching. And most people, the consumer doesn't know that. They hear coach and they go, oh, all coaches are the same. They're not. So you already had this, excellent coach platform happening, and you take it another step further to be a coach who works with horses. What drove you to that point?
So I'm a nerd. I am an education addict. I like to spend time and money, as my dwindling but still existent loans will confirm 3-4 master's degrees later. And so, Kelly, that was what made our conversation a very quick one, to commit the very real time and energy and vulnerability and learning and beginner's mind to come and apprentice with you, which has been just an incredible privilege and learning experience. And the coaching thing, because I had been coaching, facilitating for 20 years really in some form, right? And so when you're like, oh, I think, that ICF thing really is a thing, I had a little skepticism. And your point of like, Picasso went to the academy, right? It doesn't mean that you have to only do that, but you want the tools, and that is exactly. So I think it comes back to that like enlightened self-interest, right? It's not about ticking a box. It's not about. There is a nice piece about career flexibility, right? As coaching becomes a thing, we see that PCC in job descriptions, and that's not my intended future to have a jobby job at a company as a coach, but that's a nice safety piece in an uncertain world, to have that. But again, it goes back to what I need and love, which is learning and which is excellence. I don't want to do things. I am deeply intuitive in my work, and I value experience and wisdom and expertise. I want to learn from the best people out there and be colleagues with the best. I don't want it to be hacked or cottage industry. And I want it to be integritous. I want it to be of service. I don't want there to be any risk or harm to participants, which I think is real unintentionally, but without the proper training. Just first of all, very fundamentally, horses are big. They bite, they kick, they're big. And so just that, right, is a very real danger once you get into this. But more broadly, why did I do it? Because I don't want people to be harmed by our work culture and by extractive capitalism and the way that normalizes hustle and expectations and inbox zero, right? I do not want to optimize people for that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful, heartful, sort of a counterplay, because there's so, inside the hustle culture is the coach hustle culture of, the coaching industry pushing people to be these kind of superhero versions of themselves. And that's not what we're aiming for. And I think the horses do keep us honest in that way, right? There's someone I have to be as a human in order to be in true partnership with the horse. And that is counter to being a hustle coach, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So, well, and if you wouldn't mind to indulge me just a little bit and share with some folks who might be interested in following a similar path to yours, I'm really appreciating this conversation, because I want for people who are listening to kind of get a grasp of the caliber of folks that are EQUUS experience practitioners. Before they're even considered, they have to come with a wealth of experience, not only in the horse world, but in the world, and come with such a large capacity to serve in the world before we'll even consider, taking folks on. And now you're part of a kind of an accidental cohort that have sort of self-organized, and so many of the folks in that circle are amazing humans. So, but if you wouldn't mind just to share what the experience has been like for you. And I know it's still evolving as EQUUS learns and grows, but share with us a little.
So we were, I've ridden since I was 12, bits and pieces, never owned my own horse. And it faded while I was a nonprofiteer in the West Bank and Rome and Tokyo. That wasn't always accessible to me, but have started riding again in the last several years, and sort of knew that there was this thing that used horses and coaching. And I didn't identify as a coach either, even though a lot of what I was doing was group coaching and facilitation. And so when I decided to close my company after 10 years, knew that there was a book coming, which has now come, and wanting
tell us the title of your book.
Going first, find the courage to lead purposefully and inspire action. And the Purpose Party Playbook is the indispensable companion. They go together because it is, I have some brilliant ideas. I have some great stories from interviews and my experience, and that's all in the book. And it's brilliant. There's a very cool, simple framework that boiled down after 11 years of work with hundreds of people. But it does not matter if you do not engage with it. And so I wrote the playbook, which is a 200-page workbook, playbook, that really guides people through it, which meant a lot to me because it made it accessible as well. You know, you don't have to pay the thousands of dollars that programs are to work with me as a coach. And I value that. And I have no qualms about the value that people receive and the financial payment that they make for it. And it is very rewarding and important to me that for $19.99, people can get it and do it on their own with peers or friends or me if they're so inclined. So in all of that, I was really looking for all the things, right? I talk about the 3 dimensions of impact. And so for me, I wanted a new way. I did not want to run a company. That had become very clear that that was not my zone of genius. For the people that I was going to work with, I wanted something else. I don't think I could have, I know I could not have named it before I met you and we had the conversation, and even more now, 2+ years on, that it was horses and natural wisdom. But that element was really takes what I do with people to another level, which I can speak to further. But then just to finish the me, we, world piece was again, this realization that like 2020, I mean, so much broke, and it was broken already, but it shattered loudly and visibly for everyone to see, not just the people who were victim or subject to the broken systems, right? We all got it thrown in our face and experienced it to a greater extent than we used to before, when we could pass out of it with our whiteness or our richness or our geography. So I knew that there was something else. And so I knew some people and some things to ask, which led me to you. And we had really a 45-minute conversation. I remember walking around my neighborhood about this time of year, several years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And I was like, yeah, right. This is the 2-year journey that I want to commit to. And, you know, I think $10,000-ish. Don't quote me, go to the FAQs if you're thinking about the program, but, you know, a significant investment of time and money and attention. And I was like, yeah, that's it. And so started reading and learning from you and the beautiful book that is Flying Lead Change, just a magnificent metaphor for those of you who are riders. And those of you who are not, you'll get it. Don't worry. And then came to Santa Fe and dove in and did the work and felt the work and watched the work. And then came home and started thinking about how I might play with it and what 4-legged partners I might find here. And they emerged magically, as they tend to. I still don't own horses. And I didn't have that lined up when I started working with you.
Yeah.
And then I came back to Santa Fe and I did the work. I led the work. I led a session with you.
You did.
Were like, oh, this person canceled. I'm your client. And I was like, perfect.
You did. And if I can just interject here, I just received back my kind of postcard from that, you know, the letter to myself from that session with you where you were facilitating me. And I have to share that in that session, Cassie, my question was about, you know, growing bigger, or, you know, what my business wants to grow. How do I manage this? What am I going to do? Kind of thing. And Cassie came and literally sat on me. Do you remember? She was like sitting
Cassie the donkey.
Cassie the donkey. Cassie the donkey. She comes over to me and I sort of feel compelled to go to the ground. And this is the thing, that when you're with a coach who knows how to hold the space for these things to happen, the most unusual things happen. So yes, it's Cassie, but it's also Nell's holding this space for a space of possibility and safety that all these things could occur. So Cassie just literally like kind of rubs her belly kind of on my shoulder, just kind of squish me into the ground in a really sweet way, really sweet, really safe, really gentle, but very directive of it. And, you know, the ultimate message was, it's not about bigger, it's about deeper, like go down into the earth. And was really important for me for that whole arc of the year after that. So that's what happened in my session with Nell. But yeah.
That was, you know, again, everything happens for a reason. I could have a whole guilt shame story about not sending that to you in the 6 to 8 weeks after that I was supposed to send it. And I just found it when I weeded my office, but I don't, I really don't do guilt or shame as I try, you know, I don't, because it was perfect. You know, it was perfect. You've come beyond it, and here it is. And it was in preparation for this talk that wasn't on the books yet, and whatever.
Right.
It's like,
exactly.
Also all in perfect order. So truly.
Totally. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. And so got to do that, you know, the next day was again, all in perfect order, not intentionally by you or by request of me, but what happened was that a group from your partner at the Four Seasons, right? They're adjacent to the beautiful Buffalo Spirit Ranch. And so a team came over from there, which was a huge message to me of my holy trinity of work, which is leadership and transformation. And it has been that since I was 12, really. That's a whole other story. But certainly for my entire professional career, that's what I've been thinking about, is leadership and potential, human potential and growth. And then the initial thing with you was horses, and was like, oh, right. That's been a total, again, sort of side passion. And then these folks from the Four Seasons came over, and I was like, and travel. Full circle back to our very first conversation. I love travel. I enjoy on the road. And so, you know, that was just so cool. And so enter my EQUUS pop-ups, and who knows where all that'll go, but where it has gone already is this incredible partnership with a very, very elite and magnificent resort in Umbria, Italy, which, you know, does not take partnership lightly. They've already kicked 2 champagne brands to the curb. But, you know, the credibility of you and the work with this and me and my ICF, PCC as of just a few days ago officially, and, you know, education, and of course my personhood and showing up and doing the work for them all has led to this incredible partnership, you know, that has not been easy or quick and will continue to deepen. But, and neither that could have been seen. But I remember so vividly in that first very short and very convincing conversation that we had, you said, when people do this, the universe makes the path. And
it's so true.
Gosh, that has been true.
It's really true. And I love, y'all, just in case you missed it, just to hear it again, Nell created EQUUS pop-ups. This is like her thing. We don't know where it's going. We're keeping an eye on it. We're, you know, whatever, but to make the EQUUS experience available overseas in amazing locations. This Nell has just got this down, and it just seems to be her gift. So please keep an eye on that space. Nell, I want people to know how to reach you, you know, your website, your socials, and also if there's any, and I'm sorry, I didn't prepare you for this part, but if there's any kind of special offer or anything with your book or anything at all, please take a moment now to tell everybody.
Yeah. So LinkedIn is definitely hub central to find me. My name is really long and really unique, so it is not hard to get to me. An invitation is to join the Going First study group. There is no requirement or mandate or threshold other than being willing to go first in your own way and lead purposefully and inspire action. So the next is on the full moon, January 25th, and that's more of a community conversation about, this time, purpose for performance. But over the course of 2024, every new moon we gather with kind of a new topic and provocation, drawing on the book with a brilliant, beautiful speaker who comes along for the ride. So February 9th, on the next new moon, we'll be with Brooks Tingle, who is the CEO of John Hancock, a life insurance company. Last time it was Saori Okada, who is a Japanese wellness expert. So you can see there's a really broad range of speakers, and we kind of nod to some part of the book. So certainly the intent is, if you're going through the book and the playbook, it's a really lovely community to enhance that learning. If you're not going through the book, no shame, no harm, no foul. It's still a really beautiful community gathering. And all of those invites are on LinkedIn. So really easy to kind of just start with me on LinkedIn and follow the thread. And then a final real bonus, you hadn't mentioned it, but I actually just finished a little excerpt of the playbook around your job and how you can really connect the dots between your job, whether you're an accountant or a bagel maker or a construction worker or a coach or an investment banker or anything in between those things, but really connecting the dots about that little bit of impact in making the world better that you do in that job, and or how you want to move toward that. So it's just a really simple half dozen pages of PDF to give you a taste of this work and hopefully create some benefit in and of itself, and also turn you on to the bigger work. So I think, Kelly, the easiest is just for people, again, you just message me on LinkedIn if you want that, or if you want to get back through Kelly's people and email me, that's easy too.
Terrific. And I think Kelsey, our venerable host here, is going to make sure that everything is written in the text below the video.
Perfect.
Great. Thank you, Nell. And if someone is in your area and wants to do the EQUUS experience, are you currently taking clients?
Yes, we're on a little bit of a winter hiatus. It's just too cold for these few months to be reliable. But starting, I have not set dates yet. Again, message me on LinkedIn if you're interested. And when they are live, I'll share. I'll be doing some group open to the public, just sign up via Eventbrite, pay for your spot, and come join a group of 10 folks up in North Salem, New York. It's about an hour train ride from Manhattan. I'm in Greenwich, Connecticut. Also can do sessions here one-on-one if you want that deep one-on-one immersive experience. I think March 15th, it starts to get pretty safe, where we can at least plan on it and then call an audible if we have to for a spring snowstorm. But yeah, I'll be doing one group session per month. Already have a few in July for a Vistage group of CEOs, which is going to be really fun. So if you have a group in mind, we can also do a custom day with a lunch and talk and walk, as well as EQUUS up in North Salem.
Terrific. So, and I'll take this opportunity to invite anybody who is interested in, we are taking applications for our 2024 EQUUS Experience Facilitator Certification Cohort. We have 2 spaces left. It's a new model. It used to be one-on-one. Now it's a cohort model, very small cohort of between 4 and 6 people. So please reach out to us at connect@equisinspired.com if you are interested and want to be considered to be a part of the 2024 cohort. The Wisdom of Thriving course. Yes, please.
And really, more people. I can imagine, if you have some experience and you're qualified, you probably, but even if you have the, 10,000 hours of horsiness and the coaching, or you want to get there, you're willing to do the formal coaching training, it still probably sounds like a big lift. Let me tell you, again, I had no idea that I was going to find a neighbor with horses or a retreat, 5-star retreat in Italy that was going to take me in to do this work. Truly, the universe opens a path if you go first and take that step to do the training. So if it intrigues you at all, if there's any tingle to that, call and have the conversation, because the rest will take care of itself.
Terrific. Thank you for saying that, Nell. Thank you so much, because I think people do go, oh my gosh, how am I going to make this happen? And it is the universe does
Just
help
do
make
it.
it happen. Yeah.
Nike it.
One of the prerequisites to the EQUUS Experience Certified Facilitator training is the Wisdom of Thriving, my 8-week course that is a deep dive into my book, Flying Lead Change. We have an early bird special ending February 7th. So go onto the website and book your spot and be a part of that course. It is a prerequisite to EECF. So, and even if you're not interested in EECF, it's just a great way to take a deeper dive inside a learning community of really amazing humans. And then lastly, I have a discount code for my book, Flying Lead Change, and it's podcast 50. Just go onto our shop, select the book, and enter podcast 50, and you'll receive the book for 50% off. So that's it. Nell, before I let you go, if you would please close this time together with one thing that you have learned that's been essential to you as a human that you would like to pass on to others.
I have to go with the horse's wisdom in being rather than doing. The more I invest in being, how and where and what I want to be, and less the doing and the list. And I am a doer. But the more of my day that I can shift to being. And that doesn't mean not doing, but just the shift in focus to being. Oof, the better for me and my family, goodness knows, my husband and my team and the world, especially these days. There is so friggin' much doing energy out there. So just be. Just be.
Thank you, Nell. It's beautiful. Okay, good people. Have a wonderful, thank you so much for your time and your really good company. And everybody have a beautiful day, night, morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. Know that there is a wonderful community of people that is around you through EQUUS. And thank you for spending your time with us. Thanks,
Kelly,
Nell.
thank you so much for your wisdom and leadership. So good.
Thank you. Bye.